Here I've got the latest in Waldorf's historic line of wavetable synths. It's the Protein, an 8-voice synth with 4 layers, all using Waldorf's classic wavetables that originated on the PPG back in the 80s. And what you're listening to is a single patch on this, playing 4 parts, an arp, a re-style bass, an offbeat bass and a lead, with just some beats and swooshy effects and a little vocal over the top. The rest is all Protein. And in this we have direct PPG lineage, as just like on the PPG and Microwave 1, 2 and the XT, this contains the 8-bit versions of those wavetables, so we have that classic gritty tone. And being only 128 samples long, those waves bring with them all those lovely imaging artifacts that we got on the original synths. But this isn't a replica or a new version of the Microwave 1, it's a bit of a hybrid design. Like the Microwave 2, it's got digital filters, and like its bigger and much more expensive brother, the Waldorf M, you can have different wavetables on each of the 2 oscillators. On the originals, you use the same wavetable for both. There's just one big wavetable knob on the older models. And we've lost a fair amount of the complexities to the older models. We've lost the 8-stage wave envelope that had looping points in there. We've also lost a lot of the mod matrix. This is 8 slots, not 16. And on things like the XT, there's some Boolean algebra and stuff you could do in that mod matrix. It did make things a little bit daunting when you read the manual, to be honest. This keeps things a lot more standardized. We've got 2 LFOs and 3 ADSR envelopes, but we have lost things like the ASIC bug that you got in the original one, and you got it on the M as well. That was like a mathematical truncation error or something. When the volumes of the oscillators got too loud or too high, it did some weird truncation and created some weird, mad digital distortion, which was actually quite nice. And it's a surprisingly light little unit. It's in a plastic case, but the front is metal, so it feels well put together. We've got a mix of plastic shafts, so anything that's a sort of continuous controller without any clicking is a plastic shaft. Anything that you have a little discrete sort of positions on is metal, and these are also pushable. So which one? This one here. Which other ones I'm thinking? I think target down here. There you go, yeah. So some plastic, some are metal. Trying to find, there you go, another metal one. On the rear, we've got full-size stereo outputs, and we've got 3.5mm TRS MIDI in and out. It comes with a pair of nicely Waldorf branded TRS to 5-pin DIN connectors, and it's powered by this USB-C. And if you want to use this for MIDI as well as for power and not use the MIDI in and out here, you will need to use this Waldorf branded noise eliminator. So it's a USB isolator, and it really works. It gets rid of all that nasty USB noise you can get, so I imagine that will be handy for lots of other synths as well. Like the XT and the Blowfelt, the filter on this is digital. We've got a 12 and 24 dB high pass, low pass, plus some distortion models on this, but that is a lot less than you got on the XT. The XT had all sorts of things like wave shapers and FM. The Blowfelt's got loads as well. And what I'm really trying to do is show that it sits within the Waldorf family, but it's not a clone of anything in particular. So it's got the grittiness of the Microwave 1. It's not a clone of the Microwave 1, but it's a lot grittier sounding than the Blowfelt, which I think has got 16-bit wavetables in there. So the Blowfelt's a little bit smoother, this is grittier. So this is more like, I would say, the character of this is more like it was on the Microwave 1 and the PPG. So it's not a clone, but it has got a lot of similar vibe, and you can recreate loads of the tones from the Microwave 1, but it does lack some of the complexities. If I turn it on then, we've got this really useful, I say useful screen, it's absolutely essential for finding your way around it. So everything that you do, you'll be looking at the screen really. So we go into the edit menus, so wave, filter, and different envelopes. Let's go into wave, so select. Now we're looking at the wavetables, so we can move between oscillator 1, oscillator 2, or link the 2 of them. And then we can change the wavetables. So if you've ever used any Waldorf stuff before, you'll recognize the names of these: resonant, resonant 2, mallet, square sweep, bellish. Replace something. It's nice, isn't it? Handy having this little play button, by the way. Let's take that dirt off. We've got some noise in there as well. So we've got 2 oscillators plus noise. Change that wavetable. So finding your way around, really quite easy. Shift functions, so there's the level, and the det is the noise. If we play that. Turn the resonance up or down. Change the filter type. Whoops. Change the filter type. Let's go to a high pass. High pass 12 dB. And then we've got drive. So this adds different types of det. So add the drive, and then the resonance now changes the type of drive. So crunch, diodes, pickup, tube, and then this is the amount. So you can't have the drive and the filter. In the modulation section, we've got LFO1 and LFO2. So that's LFO1 speed. If we hit LFO1, we can go into the different options for LFO1. So we can have that free, we can have it synced. So it's clocked now. We can have it pair voice or global. Pair voice would mean that when you hit the different keys, you get 8 different LFOs. Global means it acts as one. And then the mod matrix, we can go to the different options on the mod matrix. We've got 8 different slots there. So change the target, change the source, change the amount, positive or negative. Just trying to show you how you find your way around it, really. Detune, glide, envelope settings, we've got pan settings, that's random. Different amounts of random panning. So shift, pan, or fixed. And we've got 3 envelopes, a wave filter and an amp envelope. We just hit one of the knobs. You go to that envelope's main screen, and then you move between A, D, S, and R. So attack, decay, sustain, release, and whichever one you're on is the one you're controlling. So the envelope knobs control the A, D, S, R parameter values, and the select knob selects which of those values you're changing. So you've got a wave envelope knob, a filter envelope knob, and an amp envelope knob. And they all change A, D, S, and R. So it's a little bit of a weird way to do it, but it does work once your muscle memory kicks in. But once you do, it's pretty simple. It's a unique way of doing it, actually. So yeah, come back to wave. It'll be on the release, which is where I left it. Go to the attack, for example, go to filter, come back to the wave. I'm still on the attack. Coming over to the effects then, and I've just realized that I didn't have the noise isolator plugged in, so it's been a little bit noisy while I've been demoing that. It's now plugged in and it's completely silent. So yeah, the effects works in the same way as everything else with the modulation, as in the user interface I'm trying to describe here. So type of effect, type, the amount, so that's the dry or wet. Hit this to move across to the chorus or whatever else you want it to be. Lots of different types in there. But to modulate the parameter at the bottom, we need to hit shift, and this will modulate through the parameters, and then the value will change the value of the bottom one. So you just got to, again, get your head around what the shift function does, because I was forever at the start when I first got this. I was pressing shift and then changing through the parameters rather than changing the value. So this is the value knob. I'm telling myself that more than telling you, just to remind myself. So yeah, 2 oscillators, single filter, 3 envelopes, and we can do pretty much anything that you can do on any synth. As I say, a nice, uncluttered, traditional synth architecture, 2 oscillators, filter, 3 envelopes, some modulation and 2 effects, plus all within 8 voices on 4 layers. So it's not a knob pair function, but I think they've done a really good job of getting a lot of stuff on the interface without too much menu diving. In fact, I don't really think, I wouldn't consider it to be menu diving at all. Everything's a click or two away. You've just got to get the muscle memory going, especially with the envelopes and with the effects, and just remembering what knobs are going to do what. But once you've been playing with it for a little bit, it all seems to just fall into place. Now, before I go on and play with this a little bit more, I thought I'd just go into a little bit about wavetables. If you're not quite sure what wavetables are or why they're so good, or why you'd want the gritty wavetables, I'll just do a few minutes and explain what it's all about. So here's just, I don't know what patch this is, and Rainbows number 220. And I've just been playing this and I thought this is a nice one to demonstrate what I mean. That's an incredibly complex tone that you couldn't do on something like a Jupiter 8, for example. All that modulation in there is all because of wavetables. And what a wavetable is, it's essentially like an early form of sampling. So you could get a sound, say a 6-second block of sound, and you chop that up into lots of little single cycle waves, and each of those single cycle waves is slightly different, but if you put them all together you get a wavetable, which if I just initialize the sound, you see what I mean here. So here's a wavetable, wavetable 1, and as you move through it we get different tones. And you heard at the end there we went into analog wave shape, so a triangle, a square and a sawtooth. And that's what the classic Waldorfs did. At the end of every wavetable there was the analog wave shapes. We can get rid of that so we don't modulate into it. If we select oscillator 1, it says all waves. We don't want all waves, we want just to limit the waves. So now we can't modulate up into those other ones, so everything's nice and smooth. But because on the original ones you only had one wavetable you could use between the two oscillators, it was quite useful to have those so that you had like a sawtooth or a square for a sub, for example, or a triangle for a sub on the other oscillator. But if we move to a more complex wavetable, let's go to one of these formant ones on 28. We're getting really complex wave shapes and we're getting lots of harmonics without having to do lots of programming. We haven't had to program much in there. We've just loaded up the sound or the sample really, haven't we? Trying to do this on a standard synth or virtual analog or an analog would be virtually impossible. And then of course you modulate through those. So if we add some envelope modulation to that, it's really slow at the minute. Let's just speed that up. Let's just put the panning as well on 0. Put it onto fixed. But if I do that nice and long, these envelopes are really long. You can hear that it's stepping through each of those waves, which again is a classic thing the original ones did. They didn't interpolate between the waves. Newer wavetable synths can interpolate between the waves to make that a really nice smooth transition from wave 1 to wave 2 to wave 3. Whereas on the older kit, it couldn't do that. The CPU power just wasn't there. So again, that gives this another bit of a gritty flavor. So if you're modulating that with an LFO, for example, you can hear those steps and it adds to give it a really nice effect. Which again, if we just try and find another random spacey pad, we should be able to hear things like that happening. Let's try this, Ice World, number 91. That's a really beautiful tone, isn't it? I'm not sure you can hear the stepping through the wavetables in there, but you can hear what I mean. We've got an awfully complex sound there. We've only got 2 oscillators playing, and there's lots of things happening, loads of interesting harmonics, loads of modulation, but from a pretty simple synth. And in that we do have the 8-bit samples as well. The 128 sample long waves in there, and they create their own brand of grittiness as well. Now let's just find this first one again. Come down to here and to the first wave. That looks like a sine and should be a sine really. And it sort of sounds like a sine. We can hear little artifacts in there. Now, as these are 8-bit and 128 samples long, the way wavetables work, I've got other videos showing how to do this and what it's all about. But in brief, if you've sampled something up here, which is about 128 sample length, is an F sharp 4 plus 23 cents or something at 48 kilohertz. It'll all make sense if you watch another video of mine, but it's there, I think it is. But if we play an octave lower, we need 256 samples to play that tone, because you need half the amount of cycles to get the same note. And there you'll need 4 times, so you'll need 512 samples. Here we'll need 1,024 samples, and down here we'll need 2,048 samples. So where do those other samples come from? Play down here. You can see the classic little steps in this. Make that more obvious. If I play higher up, it's much smoother. Back down again. And we've got the steps back. Old synths then, with 128 samples per wave, they did that to save memory. And when they're playing lower down, they have to just invent new samples. So these days they would interpolate through the curve. In the old days, they just added the sample, which is where you get those steps from. But those steps are now integral to the wave, which means when you play it, you're actually playing a different wave than you are higher up. You're playing one with the steps, and that introduces those little high frequencies. And those high frequencies are actually quite melodic because they are part of the wave. They're not like aliasing where it's unrelated to the pitch. It is related to the pitch because it's part of the wave. Lovely weird little tones that you don't get on newer synths, and that's the sort of, or part of the gritty nature of this. So the wavetables give you all these lovely interesting harmonics that you can modulate through and do really complex stuff really simply. Think about this: 2 oscillators, 3 envelopes, 2 LFOs, and make it that really beautiful patch that we just played there. And that's all possible because of wavetables, and the grittiness comes from the 8-bit 128 sample long wave shapes. So that's why this is quite, say, exciting, but that's what makes it an interesting synth. It's not your run-of-the-mill, everyday, common sort of virtual analog synth. Those envelopes are really nice and long, aren't they? I wonder how long that will go on for. What effects have we got in there as well? A reverb with a tower of 87. Still waiting. Looking at what it comes with then, we've got 225 different programs in there. If we go to the end, This is a beta version of the firmware and it goes up to 360. I think there was only 250 was there perhaps, or 300 in the original firmware. So there's lots more there for you to create your own. Okay, let's take a listen to a couple I've made myself. Really quite simple things. The first one here is just a warm pad. Give me an idea of what the whole thing sounds like. It's a 12 dB filter. And there's some resonance. 2 oscillators, slightly detuned. Say slightly detuned, there's an interval in there of a fifth. Let's change that to a 24 dB. Bit more resonance. Drop that down. I've got a little tremolo in here and some chorus. So let's add a bit of depth to that tremolo. Oh, that's nice, isn't it? And I know this isn't a typical wavetable style patch, but it just gives me a nice idea about how things sound, and it sounds nice. It can do a virtual analog thing, so you don't have to do the glassy, really high harmonic content stuff. It has got range. It sounds good, doesn't it? In fact, I'm going to save that with that tremolo on low. Let's try it with that's got a chorus and a tremolo. Let's try that with a bit of reverb. Turn a bit more reverb in there. That's a lot of reverb. Let's turn the time up, see what we get. Whoops. A little bit of distortion there. Let's try high pass. Maybe turn that down a little bit. It's a bit overwhelming, isn't it? So yeah, there you go. It can do those sort of really nice, rich virtual analog style things. So next one I tried was more of a wavetable type tone. This one, Dream Piano. And on this you can hear it modulating through the wavetable. Nice and subtle. Nice that, isn't it? And then just playing with layers, and this is combining the two into a multi using layers A and B. So taking the effects off this so you can hear. That's really nice as well, isn't it? Let's add some effects to that as well. So what should we stick on there? So we stick a chorus on. Type chorus. And then maybe a delay. So let's Where's the delays? Got compression, EQ, delay. I'll show you what the effects, how the effects work in a second. Just trying to give you an idea of the sound of it. And these are really simple things I've programmed. Whoops. So they were really easy things to program. They only took a couple of seconds and they just sound nice, which to me is the sign it's a good synth. You don't really have to work at it to get nice things from it. Just play around and nice things pop out. That's exactly what you want from a nice little bit of hardware. But as these were used an awful lot in the 90s, the Microwave one, I had the Microwave XT. They were used all over sort of trance tracks back in the 90s. You've got 4 layers here, but if you've got a bass, you've got an arpeggio, you've got say a second bass or a lead line, you're still only using 4 notes. So there's an awful lot you can do with 4 layers and 8 voices, as you heard in the intro. So I'll just run you through that intro track a little bit just so that you can see what I've done with that by splitting the 4 layers into 4 MIDI channels. Here's the Logic program then. The yellow is the respace, the green is the offbeat bass, the turquoise is a little arpeggio. In blue down here, I'll show you that in a second, we've got some CC modulation, and then the lead in purple. So there are your 4 parts, and I have to apologise for the full-on complete cheesiness of what you're about to hear. We kick off then with just this respace. It's quite interesting, the respace. I've used an LFO to drop the volume in time with the music. So I've synced the LFO to Logic, and it's just dropping the volume to give that sort of compression pumped effect. It's not using compression, it's just using an LFO. And then down here we've got the ARP, and on the ARP we've got some CC controlling the brightness and controlling the resonance. I'll show you how you set that up in a second, and a little bit on the envelope amount as well. Leads come in, and then some nice big cheesy snare rolls. And I'll just leap forward this because this arrangement isn't finished. There we go, nice big fat offbeat bass as well. To show you how easy it is to set up those MIDI CC controls, if we just wiggle something there, press Shift and Setting, Map CC, hit Select, and now it's waiting for a MIDI CC. The next MIDI CC it receives, it will assign to that parameter, and you can even use that with the effects. So if we wiggle this, for example, Shift and Settings, Map CC, it's now waiting for the MIDI CC to modulate the dry wet control on the effect. So even though you can't modulate the effects with the modulation matrix, they don't appear as a target in there, you can modulate them via MIDI CC. So I think that's about all I wanted to show really. We do have a sequencer and we've got an ARP in there. I don't want to go into too much of that detail. I just wanted to show you the bits that I've really enjoyed playing with so far. So maybe another day for the ARP and the sequencer, but I feel like I've been talking for ages and I spent a couple of days writing the track and everything. So I've been having a lot of fun with this. It's a nice sounding synth. I've not mentioned this little blue knob on the bottom right yet, and this is the FLAVOUR knob, and this introduces all sorts of little pitch variations and things. So without it, let's add it. We're getting little pitch variations you can hear. I think the filter's doing something slightly different. Let's turn the resonance up. Every time I hit a key, it sounds slightly different. That's like you got a vintage synth and each of the voices is calibrated slightly differently or has gone out of tune slightly differently. Yeah, that's cool. I like it. So I've had a lot of fun with this. It's a really nice sounding little synth. It's only £289, so it's cheaper than the Blofeld, and it's got a really nice character to it. On the positives, all the sound stuff. On the negatives, potentially, I would say in the dark, this blue is quite hard to see. So it's okay in the daylight, but in the dark, I just found that a bit difficult. Having to assign the MIDI CCs per patch is very handy. You've got the 4 layers, you know, so you can control whatever you want on any of the layers. But that does mean that when you turn it on, you don't have control like you would with most things that I've got pre-assigned MIDI CCs. So just something to be aware of. But if there's patches that you use a lot, or as you're creating a patch, it's not hard to do, but you do have to do it. Other things, would have been nice if the USB had audio as well, so that I could have took those 4 parts, recorded the 4 parts via USB, and then tweaked them in Logic. As it stands, I recorded them all separately and then tweaked them in Logic to get the final mix that I played in the intro. And this isn't a negative, just something to be aware of. So each of the layers, we've got effect 1 or effect 2, so or just straight out. But the effects themselves are set in the layer, not in those parts. So we don't have 4 individual synths with 2 effects or even 1 effect each. We've got the whole multi that's got those 2 effects, and you share those 2 effects between the 4 parts. Each of the 4 parts can only have 1 of the effects, and all the effect settings are set in the part or in the multi itself, not per layer. So even if we go to the dry wet control, so that's on 0.73, that's for effect 2. If we come to C, that uses effect 2. If we look in there, it's still at 0.73. So even the send level is shared between whatever layers are using the effect. But yeah, it's a really nice little synth, and I've really enjoyed playing with it. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that was of some use to somebody somewhere. If it was, please do subscribe, ring the bell, join me over on Patreon. I've got patches, samples, tutorials, all sorts of things over there. Also, do take a look at my starskycar.com website as well. Patches, samples, things you can buy, free stuff. But as I always say, it's nice if you pick up some of even the very cheap little sample packs, because it does really all help to support the channel. So thanks very much for staying to the very end, and I will see you next time.